Valley Center Planning and Zoning Board for Tuesday, March 28th. For all those who are willing and able, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States. Thank you. Roll call, please. Here.
Paul Spranger,
Here.
Brian Shelton, Scott Phillips,
Here.
Steve Conway,
Here.
Toby Meadows.
Okay. Assuming everybody's had a chance to look at and review tonight's agenda, is there any questions, comments? If there are none, I would move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is the minutes from last month's meeting. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes, any questions, comments, additions? If not, I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Brent, I assume we have. Hey, Scott, send that packet down.
Yeah.
I was just stealing yours for the moment. Thank you. Okay, assuming you have nothing else for us communications wise, we'll move into the public hearing.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. At this time, we've got one item on our public hearing agenda for tonight is a review of RZ 2023-03, application of Vincent Garcia pursuant to City Code 1711, who is petitioning for rezoning of land that is currently zoned R1B, which is the city's designation for a single-family residential district, to C1, which is the city's designation for a central business district. The property is currently addressed at 145 North Meridian in Valley Center. Brent, before you get started, for all of you here in the audience, and I assume you're all here for this item, it's the only item on our agenda tonight. A couple of things, please make sure you've signed in at the back. There will be an opportunity after Brent presents this item. We'll open up the public agenda and we'll open up to the public. We'll give the applicant a chance to speak. Anybody else who wants to speak can come up. You have to come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. So we'll come back to that. I just want to let you know how this is going to work. So Brent, if you'll have at it, please.
Did you go ahead and open the public
Well,
hearing?
I was going to wait until you're done, but we can. It's 7:17. We can go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time.
All right, sounds good. All right, good evening, board members. Nice to see you all. Thank you for making your evening filled with us here at the Planning and Zoning Board. Before you is a rezoning application from Vincent Garcia pursuant to City Code 17.11. They are he is petitioning to move this from an R1B zone to a city's which is a city's designation for a single-family residential district, to a C1, which would be a commercial district according to the Valley Center zoning code. Of course, the zoning code, all information is available on our website at valleycenterks.org. Reading through, thank you for bearing with me. I'm filling in for Ryan as he's attending the Main Street USA conference in Boston, representing Valley Center's Main Street, which was designated Kansas Main Street designated and USA designated this past year. So great opportunity for him professionally to explore Main Street. And this is, I consider this kind of part of our Main Street corridor. So this property before you, if you recall, we had a little fire that did occur on this property. That's a house, the two-story structure that did have a garage in the back, and all those structures are now gone. The property is vacant. The applicant is requesting a change from an R1B to a C1 zoning. He does have a phenomenal plan put together for this that I will scroll through to you, which includes before you, which this is not approving this building, but this is the first step, of course, on putting a structure up is making sure that is properly zoned. And so right now, this property is not zoned to accommodate this structure. And so a C1 zoning district would accommodate this structure, which would be really nice office space on the main level. The applicant is an attorney, and he is with us this evening, and be happy to speak to any questions that you might have for him. And then also have the law office on the main level with his living or his principal, right? Primary. Won't be primary. A rental unit that will be on the second story of this structure. As you see right here is kind of some inspiration that their architect is drawing from on this building. Kind of giving that little bit of a historic feel. These are very common building that is going on. We're actually trying to encourage a building such as this on our Main Street corridor as well. So once this one's successful, that's a great opportunity for that vacant land as well. As you can see, you'll have a really nice profile on the side as well as on the storefront. The front of the door will face Meridian, I believe. And then there'll be plenty of parking off of the alleyway there. Here's kind of a quick layout of what that structure could look like if the zoning did go through. Whoa. Right there. Oh, stop there. Now it's upside down. There you go. Right there's a nice side profile and a front. And if you do look at this area, when it comes to that block, there are commercial properties already on that block. That block does extend all the way to Main Street, and then also extends all the way back to Park as well. And so when you're really looking at that city block area there are a few houses from the corner to the old Shaw gas station that has been renovated into the detonator. But other than that, a lot of the structures that are on that block already are commercial.
Just so we're clear, you're talking about the square block.
Yes, the square block. There's a whole bunch of details, but sorry. I like this one the most. Gives a good overview.
And I appreciate that, Brent. I just want to remind everybody that tonight our only action is for the zoning and not the site plan.
Correct. Yep. But we think, as city staff, that was important to lay that vision for you. So, you're not thinking it's going to be, a truck stop or, Casey's or something sitting on that corridor, to where it is going to be a mixed use. And so this isn't going to be just a commercial lot, but also a mixed use with the dwelling above that commercial unit. And there's the burned house. I'll stand for questions.
What's the, and I do have some questions of the applicant and when we get done. And I know you've got some of the information in the staff report. This is within the downtown overlay, which extends to Park, right? How does that, and I asked this question before, and just tell me if it doesn't make sense. How does the downtown overlay and the comprehensive plan go together, or do they? I mean, what does the comp plan show for this area? Or is that kind of irrelevant since this is in the downtown overlay?
So the downtown overlay district, it's basically a plan unit, development area that the district overlay for that is separate than the comprehensive development plan. Now, of course, though, in the comp plan or in the strategic plan, of course, are future land use maps and those types of things. And so, it does tie a little bit to those when you reference that document on the comp plan or a strategic plan, but the overlay district is its own standalone document for the downtown Main Street district.
And does the overlay district talk about mixed use, I would assume? It doesn't. I'm just asking. I'm not questioning. I'm just asking. I assume the overlay district contemplates both residential and commercial and a mix and all of the above.
Yeah,
Does that
if you
sound
look
about right?
at the existing, downtown footprint, there's a lot of the old historic buildings that have living units and living dwellings above those storefronts. There's, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. There's 6 now that are above downtown buildings. And so, yes, it is in the downtown district overlay plan.
Oh, that's fine. I think that was all the questions I had for now. If no one else has anything, we'd like to hear from the applicant. If I do have one question for you, even if the applicant, if you'd like to make, you're welcome to say anything. And if you don't want to, I do have a question or two for you.
Well, you have the proposal that Ryan.
We do.
Yeah, we do. So that proposal.
And you might, you're obviously the applicant, you might introduce yourself, just so everybody here knows who you are, please, if you don't mind. No, you're fine.
Jesse Garcia, address 12007 West Hartman Court, Wichita, Kansas. Like he was saying, we bought that lot there. Originally, I was working with Graham Crane, and Graham and I, and we were planning on putting a concrete house there. Well, the machine that he had purchased from Germany would not fit on that lot. It sits on a quad pod, and it has to be a certain distance away in order to make the concrete walls for the residents. So that kind of fell through. So this was a second plan that we had. Well, I shouldn't say we. My wife and I planned this separate from Graham Crane. Any questions that you have, I can answer those. We tried to research this to where we knew that it was in the downtown overlay, and we didn't want to make it any different than what's already in the downtown overlay. Now, obviously, the previous house that was there isn't commercial, but it is in that overlay. Or as we found out some things from Ryan and also, I believe, the Public Works guy, as far as when Meridian was going to be completed up there. So we've kind of put the plan back behind that. Apparently, they're going to start the Meridian, I don't know, drainage, curbs, wider sidewalks, all that, sometime in October. At least that's what the tentative plan is. So we've already hired a architectural firm to do an architectural survey. And the reason that he's not going to start until after you're done is that he has to do not only the elevation, but he has to mark where the curbs are at. If you're going to be changing the curbs, we don't want to do it a second time.
Right.
So apparently those sidewalks are going to come out. They're going to make wider sidewalks. That's going to be in the plans too. So again, we just don't want to redo what you people are going to be doing, because that's going to create some havoc if I have to pay for two different architectural survey drawings, and those are more expensive than a regular survey.
And that's fine. We appreciate that. I don't know that makes sense. The timing for us probably isn't that critical, but that makes sense. I have a question for you related to parking and more so just what being a law office, and I assume you've got normal business hours. What would you expect, like number of people there and what parking would be? I mean,
Let me correct that just for a minute. I know he said that was a law. That's a possibility.
okay, so you don't know for sure, yeah.
No, that's not a done deal. The size of the actual building is 32 by 30 feet, which that would leave a lot of parking in the front of it. In the downtown overlay, if I researched it correctly, the actual building itself can be abutted right up to the boundary line. According to the fire codes, it does have to be at least, I believe, 10 feet away from any structure. So there is a garage to the south of there. So that building would have to be at least 10 feet away from there. But we're going to try to back it up as far as we can and leave the public parking toward the front.
So you would create some off-street parking on the property. That's your goal. Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't just have First Street as the parking.
You answered I just wanted to ask. You answered my question.
The other thing is that originally we were looking at maybe putting a driveway in the front off of Meridian, and actually talked to the Public Works people, and they didn't think that was such a good idea. In talking with the Armstrong survey, they were basically saying the same thing. Look, the best way to do that, if they're going to put a new street in the front, is to have an entryway from the First Street side.
Right. Okay, that was all the question I had. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
having some experience with this in a very similar location called Carmel, Indiana. In fact, I was just there on Saturday and taking photos of some of the houses and some of the downtown redevelopment in that area. And it's very much a northern edge city of Indianapolis. And I would strongly encourage, I was a plan commissioner there for 13 years and developed a city that is now rated number 1, number 2 in the country. If there's a build to line because you want to create a streetscape, looking down the road into the future, a streetscape. So rear parking, having forward parking in terms of creating a old town streetscape, rear parking is much preferred. And what was done there was a lot of build 2 lines and with rear parking coming off of the side street. I'm just suggesting that that's in terms of when it all gets built out, with some other light commercial in the overlay zone, you want a certain look, and that's a critical street for the city. It really is in terms of creating a sense of place.
It sounds like I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you don't even know quite the purpose of the building yet, you probably saw some flexibility with what you might do.
As far as where the building goes.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Paul. I don't want to get too
in the weeds,
that's part of the discussion we'd have with the site plan review.
Yeah,
but that's a
right.
very good point.
But I'm just kind of laying that out. So
Sure.
as a thought, and I can give you some photographic examples and some of the things that happen. And I think when you see that, just go, hey, my building is going to fit into that.
To doing that though, is and I understand you're going to be putting in a street on North Main and then on South Main. If you ever go to redo that, we're talking about in the really far future where you
Right.
go double lanes both direction and Valley Center gets a lot bigger. If that building's there, then the city has to end up buying the building.
Well, it depends. It depends on what the ultimate street plan thoroughfare plan becomes. And I'm familiar with that, having chaired a thoroughfare committee for a long time. But anyway, I'm just trying to leave some flexibility there because of the intent here is good. The living over, creating a architectural look, because you're going to be kind of leading the way in some respects in terms of new product to create that old town look. And I can tell you this, that the houses, and I'll say this publicly, the houses that were in that area that were selling for $100,000, you can't touch now for $500,000. And some of them are bungalows. It's amazing what happened when that look occurred. People want to be there. They want to be close to the downtown. They want to be able to walk and ride bicycles. It's amazing what can be done. And so this project is a great lead piece into that. We're not trying to restrain anything, but
stone on anything as far as what we're doing.
yeah, no, we're not trying to.
Get some input and things like that.
Right. No, we're not trying to constrain, what is code. But I'm just suggesting that this is a great opportunity for you as a developer. You never know. You might be doing more of them.
Anybody? Thank you, Paul. Any other comments? Right, well, I had one more quick question. I know it was partially concluded in the staff report. If this becomes a commercially zoned property, what are the screening requirements, particularly for because to the south and the west are going to remain as residential properties? Do you know what generally is there screening requirements then between the commercial and the residential, and I don't know if there is. I'm not trying to.
Great question.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if there is on commercial side. I know there is on industrial, and by
Okay.
industrial, there's a screening that does have to occur on those ones. I can check and let you know.
And again, that's probably something that's more germane to the site plan. I just wanted to ask that question now. So, okay. Any other questions Okay. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
Hey, good evening. Justin Schwenke. Nice to meet all of you. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of meeting you in and around the community. So Thanks first for your address. Oh, yeah. I own the house right adjacent to this property at 137 Meridian.
To the south.
Yes, right to the south that butts
Got it.
up to it. My residence is just west of town out there on 77th Street. So a little about me. I have 4 kids here in the Valley Center School District, live in Valley Center, and I also own 4 homes within Valley Center that I rent out through my personal resident. I own another home right up the street from this one up on Meridian, kind of closer to that donut shop, right down there, about 3 or 4 houses. So
Good investment.
yeah, I saw the request come through from Mr. Garcia. I totally am a very big proponent of Valley Center. I want to grow it. I think this is great that we have development in here. I want to continue to invest in Valley Center too. I've already invested in 4 houses. I plan on investing in more, looking at building residential within the city also. The biggest concerns, and I'd sent a letter to you guys, kind of outlaying some of the things, and then I was able to read this proposal. I think, some of the big things, right? We bought residential houses with the knowledge that this was a residential property, the area was residential, and is going to stay residential. So we paid a price that warranted that, not that it was going to go to commercial. Ultimately, if you look at the building, you look at the plan, and you go look at how close it's going to be to the house, there's no way it's not going to drive a different clientele or drive down overall property values or my ability to rent it at its current value, because it's going to be a massive structure. Also, it does concern me about setting a precedence down this Meridian corridor, because I have another house that sits really close to that other end near 85th. So that was a couple big things. I think overall, though, if we look at just the zoning component of this, I'm not a zoning expert or anything, and I know you got to think about this in a long-term plan, 50 or 100-year type of thing. This sets a bar that whatever plans we had initially may change, right? So in 5 years or 10 years, my house may be sitting beside a bar or a donut shop, not a law office or that. And so if we open this up, right, whatever plan takes place, it can change hands, and it can change quickly and really erode values. And if you look at this, that it's a residential area. We're 5-6 houses down, 5 houses down from, the corner of the street. So, I mean, it's very residential. It's not a commercial area. I get that it is in part of the central district. What's the term? Central district for the downtown, but that area is very residential. I had the same concerns on parking. I know how busy Meridian is right there. I think it's going to be very tough to design anything that's not going to impede traffic or have a lot of issues with parking along either it's First Street there or Meridian in general. The tenants that I've had in that property already say it's very challenging to get in, get out with traffic on that. And now we're going to add more traffic into it. So overall, just really worried about what it's going to do to my overall property values and the precedents that it sets. So that was kind of my big components that I wanted to voice. Any questions?
Well, I don't know that we do. We had gotten this information in writing too, so thank you for being here. Appreciate your comments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think I had any questions for you. Brent, are you aware, and I know this is a tough question to ask, because there's a lot of different situations. I mean, we've got residential up next to commercial in places all over this community, just like other communities do too. Anyway, I mean, do you know from your experience and what you do, the potential impact of property values? I mean, that's probably not, again, I don't think there's
Property values, of course, are set by the county.
right.
In Sedgwick County, I'm not sure. I haven't sat down and spoke directly, with the folks in this county before, but it's been my past experience that the property values tend to increase in valuation, adjacent to commercial. Now, depending upon what the commercial is, of course, industrial, it's a lot different. And so I did look real quick, and I did not see any screening requirements when it was adjacent to residential. Just so you know that I didn't see any special requirements for the commercial to have screening. Just so you're aware of that.
Okay.
But no, I've seen property values actually increase overall. During the initial few years.
And I appreciate that. And I mean, I work for the city of Wichita and I'm not a property evaluator, but I think I've typically seen the same depending on what it is. What happens in the future, just to kind of address one of his questions, I think I know the answer, but I wanted to ask anyway. What happens in the future when a business changes use? Is there anything formal that happens, or can a business just become whatever it wants?
Well, and if you do look, in this downtown, neighborhood overlay district, there are, prohibited, and there also are, areas that are, prohibited by conditional use. There's limitations when it comes to this. I know we had, one property, comes to mind, the old library that wanted to do something that was not within our overlay plan. And so, we do monitor that. Same thing with that strip of grass in front of the old, one of the liquor stores that left. The original liquor store. There's a little grass strip next to the optometrist. That, somebody that owned that wanted to put something that wasn't allowed, as well in the overlay district. And so we do use this on a very regular basis. We monitor it. Brittany and Ryan and Bill do a fantastic job in their department, keeping an eye on, all the applications when they come in or when people are chit-chattering, about what they're potentially wanting to do with property in the downtown overlay district. Now, of course, remember too, that commercial is taxed at a higher rate than residential. And so, I mean, that's why you also see the valuation typically increase as well. And so that does play a factor into things. I know my valuation went up again.
Yeah, mine too.
So another 40. So that's cool. So time will only tell on these things. The county, they might give you a little guidance, but it won't be accurate.
Well, and thank you for that. I'm just as interested in what you talked about on what this could become, and we've heard this concern before in different areas, and it makes sense.
Absolutely, and they're valid concerns.
But I do think there are some things set in place.
Yes,
I mean, we
there are
can't guarantee anything,
Correct.
but it's generally not likely that it's going to become some type of use that just doesn't fit there, right?
And that's why, when you're doing the site review and the site plan review, we encourage all the residents to come, in that area and voice their concerns as well. So that's another layer of review that this board has.
Yeah, this is where the architectural considerations really come in.
I know.
Uh,
I'm working on that.
Well, but let's talk about that for just a second. And I want to be careful we don't get too far ahead here. However, whether we like it or not, they all play together.
That's true.
They do.
So our for our consideration tonight is potential rezoning of this property.
Yes.
And if what happens after tonight, if regardless of what happens with the recommendation from this board, what happens with this zoning, this action tonight? Does it go to the city council?
Yes. Yep. And so depending upon the action tonight by this board, then the recommendation goes to city council. And then there's 2 readings that are done. I have not seen this council ever waive a reading of rezoning. So then it does give all the landowners adjacent to the property and around the area adequate time to also voice their concerns to their elected official.
Okay. And then to go on to the next step, then what
Yep.
would, and I'm not trying to get ahead of here. I just want to talk
Put me
to,
on the spot.
I just,
I'm trying to pull
no,
that
no,
plan
no, you're doing well. You're doing
in
well.
a few years.
I want to make sure we're all understanding what would be in place regardless of what happens. If, and I'm not predicating this on anything, if the zoning, if we recommend approval of the zoning and the city council approves that, let's talk about that site plan, then that comes back before this body in a public hearing.
Yes.
Because one of the things I heard was that maybe the concern about size and the fit. Obviously, that's a big deal, right? Because it becomes just as important if it becomes a commercial property. Nobody wants anything that stands out horribly, right? It's all still got to fit the environment. So that would come back before this body in a public hearing. Does that item then go to the city council?
No, the
It-
site plan.
Okay, I didn't think it did, but I wanted
No,
to
it
ask.
ends with this.
Okay, okay. I think that was all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak on this item? Sorry, Brent, not trying to wear you out tonight.
No, you're fine. I trying to remember zoning.
You're good.
Pick his brain. Helen LeBlanc and I live at 211 North Meridian, just 2 houses north of this requested zone change. First, I would like to know the size of this lot. I was looking at the paperwork, but numbers were transposed on one page and nowhere else does it say what size the lot is.
Brent, do you happen to know, or Mr. Garcia, do either one of you know what the size of this lot is by chance? I don't know that I saw it in here, but it's probably,
I believe it's 50 by 120.
yeah, I would have guessed the
That
120.
includes the easement.
Okay.
I believe the easement area.
But I'm assuming the 50 by 120 is pretty standard for most of those lots.
It's 50 feet.
Yeah, the width, as you're looking at it from Meridian, it's 50 feet wide, 120 feet
Look
deep.
that wide to me.
That doesn't include the area of the property line over the curb line.
Right,
Either on First Street or on Meridian.
that doesn't include the dedicated public rights of way along the street. That's just the property itself.
It's 50 by 140.
Okay.
117. 117 right here.
But it's 50 feet facing Meridian.
Yep.
And you want to build a building that you said would be 32 by 30, and you're going to sit on the property line right next to this man's driveway, correct? On the south side.
I would, ma'am, I would ask if you don't mind, and this is, and I appreciate what you want to ask. It's better if you ask the questions to us,
Okay.
and we can kind of gather these and we can get some answers.
Did I misunderstand him when he said he could build to the property line? There had to be 10 feet
Well,
from the next building?
here's what I would say to that. I don't know that you did, but I want to come bring us back to where we started. So our action tonight is to consider whether this should be commercial zoning. And I appreciate your question because I understand it's all a part of this. I can't speak for Mr. Garcia because he told us too, he doesn't have a final plan yet. And that's something that would have to be sorted out through the development of the site plan, which would be done by a separate action through the planning commission, which would also include a public. We're not here to consider that part tonight. I appreciate you asking that question, and I'm not trying to stop you from asking questions. But right now is the consideration of the commercial zoning.
Well, correct, but correct me if I'm wrong. By the time you get to the site planning, not you, but the city council has already decided yay or nay on the property.
On the zoning only.
On the zoning, correct. Correct, but, well, for me, I would not want it right next to me. Okay, we look at the parking. You all know that on the south side of First Street, there is no parking allowed on the street because it is an extremely narrow street and extremely congested on Meridian. So he has the options of either cutting more parking off of First Street or coming in the alley. One thing that I am very disappointed to hear tonight is I talked to Mr. Schrack last week, and he told me it was proposed to be a lawyer's office and a residential upstairs. I now hear tonight that he's not sure it's going to be a law office, and it is not his permanent residence. So in that, I am assuming it could very well be a rental. And I understand that the ground floor that is going to be used for commercial can be a restaurant, a thrift store, an attorney's office, a barber shop, I believe a bar. Anything that is sitting downtown could be put in there. And I would be one that would not want a bar 2 houses from my house. So, and like I say, I'm very disappointed because we, not just me, but some of the other property owners were led to believe it's a lawyer's office with the lawyer living above it. And tonight I stand here and hear totally different. So but that will fall under your new commercial plotting that you're planning. It could be a bar with a rental above it.
Would you hold that thought for just a second, Brent? Would you mind looking at where you're at right now? And let's talk just real quick, if we can, about the types of uses and what would require a conditional use permit. I wanted to see if we can find it here without going into, I wanted to talk real quick about letting you know what's permitted uses. So that, what is, so under the permitted uses that are prohibited, so all of those items right there, just for what it's worth, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but what it can't be is a liquor store, automobile service station, religious institutions, self-service laundries. We've heard the mention of a bar numerous times. Where does that fall, Brent? Do you know?
Special uses are.
That are also prohibited.
Is a bar a special use?
And I don't want to get stuck on this part. I want to try to get you the information that we can. But I was just going to see how, if we could find that on here. And we may not. And we can get that information to you. That's okay, Brent, if you didn't find it. I don't want to go through all. You had that up there. And I thought we would take a look at it.
And Brent spoke about home valuations going up. Well, home valuations go up every year no matter what we do. So will this property cause our home valuations to go up in addition to the yearly rise in our home valuation and taxes?
I don't know if there's any way to know. Sedgwick County are the ones that set the property valuations. And I mean,
What I'm asking is,
I don't think we have any way of predicting that.
you said commercial usually makes valuation go up. Well, that's why I'm wondering, does the valuation go up because of it does every year? Or does this commercial property, not knowing what it is going to be, going to make our home valuation higher or lower?
Could potentially do both.
We don't know.
Right.
And I imagine this falls under your site thing. Will signs be allowed out front
Good question.
on the property? And if so,
With
why
being Brent, if it's zone commercial within
Yeah, there's
within the zoning code would allow signage.
Yeah, there's a lengthy sign
Yeah.
code in Valley Center that breaks it down to the looms, even of how bright a sign can be, and what have you. So yeah, it's a really well written. I think it was recently passed 13, 14 or something.
And I think it takes into account the nature of where the property is and what's adjacent to it, and probably provides more restrictions in an area like this.
do they restrict the hours of operations if it were to become something other than what we thought was a law office?
I don't know that I would not necessarily think so. I think that's going to depend on the permitted uses. I'm not aware that city code probably restricts hours of most businesses.
Only thing, would restrict would be, potential noise issues.
Sure.
Well, I think that's most of my questions that I have. But like I say, I am extremely disappointed that we were led to believe it was going to be a law office and the lawyer would be sitting upstairs, and I find out today that it's totally
Unfortunately, I think that's the nature of these types of deals. And Brent mentioned something earlier, and I'm not trying to make a case for it, but just within this downtown overlay district, there are a lot of commercial properties that have rentals above. And I can't speak for how well that works, but I know in other items we've considered in front of this body, it seems to be a desire for that. And I think it's good for the community to be able to add that additional residential availability. So
I understand that, but you probably know as well as I do that if someone has a vested interest in the property and lives on it, it's more well-maintained than a rental unit. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, for listening to me.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on this item? Sure, if you can come on up and introduce yourself, please.
I'm Lois Thomas. I live on 136 North Park Avenue. My question is this going to affect our taxes? Is it going to make that whole area commercial?
Well, I would tell you what, and she asked that too. We don't know. And so there's two parts to what you just asked. And I'll answer the second part first. This doesn't necessarily lead to any of the rest of it becoming commercial. It depends on what any property owner wants to do, right? That's kind of hard to predict. In the future, maybe. It's hard to say. I would assume some of these houses in the area are probably rentals also. And that might make, but either way, to answer your, we don't know what it does to the taxes. It can go both ways. My experience and what I've seen, Wichita's a lot larger city, but I think generally, I don't think it hurts property values. I mean, so, that's the challenge. If you're a homeowner, you don't want to see your property taxes go up when you have to pay your taxes, but you want to see your property taxes go up when you want to sell your house, right? So you got to kind of pick which works best. But it's hard to predict. In the business of what I do and some of the things we do with improving public infrastructure in Wichita, the question's always been asked, is this going to impact my property values? And the county appraiser always says, it kind of depends. And you have to look at holistically the whole area and everything that's happening. And so I know I'm not giving you an answer because we don't know, unfortunately, what that does.
Okay, I guess I wait and see.
Sure. Thank you. Sure. Come on back up.
I didn't say my name here.
We know who you are.
Okay. A couple of things. When we researched this, I know that the way Mr. Sweeney was talking, like this is just a residential area. The City Council of Valley Center has already approved this as being the downtown overlay. And that district runs to First Street. And it includes that area. Behind the property to the street to the west, a number of commercial businesses there, as well as the same block that we're on, there are commercial businesses there. We're trying to improve Valley Center with what we own there. Sure, Valley Center doesn't want it just to stay a vacant lot. Trying to come up with a plan that fits within that downtown overlay and still maintains that area. As far as Mr. Sweeney's property, he didn't live there. He rents the house to the south of there. That's a rental. We have a couple other rentals that are in Wichita. Not like a slumlord. I keep the houses really nice. It'll be something that's really modern. We're not wanting to put something there that's an eyesore to everybody or brings the property value down. In fact, we think it'll increase the value of the area. So that's really all I have to say.
I have a quick question for you. What happens if this stays as residential zoning? Do you have another plan in place, or have you thought about that?
No, not really. We're unsure what we'll do with the property at that point.
Let me throw one thing in.
Go ahead, Paul.
And I'll bring some pictures. If these businesses are in the character of a residential architecture with a swinging shingle, it's still really good signage. It starts fitting in the character of where there may be an individual home, and then there's a business, could be a law office, whatever. I think uses are critical. But then when it's done that way, can be two-story. It then fits the character of the area, and I think that you'll find a lot less pushback and and also it blends to the community. And then you, like I say, you create a little bit more of a period architecture sitescape. And I'm just encouraging that, I mean, if that is opposed to a typical commercial frontage, there's other ways to do it that are still super attractive, super inviting commercially.
Our reasoning, when we put the proposal in front of you to have it brick, we looked at the other brick buildings that are in the downtown overlay. I mean.
Right. No, I understand.
Downtown. So that's the only reason that we were thinking about brick. I mean, we're not locked into that. Believe me, brick is
Right.
much more expensive than putting up
Yeah,
either stucco or siding.
because I could,
In fact, it would be cheaper for us to do that.
and the other community I'm referring to had a street almost identical to this, called Rangeline. And there was older homes, almost the same age group as these. It was done and they took that and some of those became commercial, but they really blended into that whole sitescape. The neighbors loved it. The uses were, obviously a little restricted from, objectionable uses, but, and it built out beautifully. And it was basically a win-win for everybody. So, the architectural look is a big deal. And I can show you from, stats, experience, photos of something has been done. The Valley Center is an early version of what the area I'm talking about and how it developed and what it turned into. And it's extremely lovely. So there's some really interesting options, and I'm delighted to give you not only contacts, but also photos of sitescapes and individual buildings and how they worked and the valuations for you as a developer, what that building becomes worth.
We would be open to suggestions as far as what would that exterior of the building look like. But I would have to tell you, no matter what we do, there's going to be somebody that doesn't
Sure.
like
I know.
the exterior of the plan.
Oh.
Whether it's done in brick or stucco or
Trust me.
siding or what have you.
Been through it. Okay. For years, but I'm just saying that there may be a fit here that keeps the character of the community, keeps those people who have homes, and will at some point actually increase the value of their homes rather remarkably. So again, we're looking for a win-win here and a win-win for you. Your value.
Any other questions?
You didn't know this property prior to the fire, did you?
No.
You bought it afterwards? Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Anybody else from the public?
So understand if this stays residential and Garcia has no plans for it, I'll gladly take it on a deed or buy it from him. There's a lot of investors that want to build residential homes in Valley Center. I would be one of them, right? So there's plans, right? Just because it doesn't go commercial doesn't mean we can't stick a house on it. And housing for
Was there
Valley
a
Center.
reason why you didn't buy it prior to it's sit?
I don't know who I talked to in the city. I tried to ask what were the plans, who was doing. I don't know if it was you I called or something.
I talked to people.
And it just kept saying, no, it's with the current owner. It's with the current owner. I would have gladly bought it.
Or you contact the current owner?
Yeah, I went to the city to buy it and they said, no, we're working it. So that was
Thank you,
So-
Steve, for asking that. Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question of Brent, see if you knew what because, I don't have a question for you. I think Steve, I drive by this every single day, multiple times, and saw that burned out house. I know what it takes to have these things, and I hear it in front of the Wichita City Council all the time. It's a tough deal, but I was going to be my next question I would assume there wasn't a lot of interest in it as long as it sat.
Now you do have to remember on a corner lot, the setbacks in the residential are a lot tighter. And so you have a front yard setback and then also the side yard setback. And so you're restricted more than you would be if it is commercially zoned. So I do want to make sure you're aware of that.
Which you could build up.
And also too, I did want to apologize because I was led to believe as well of my earlier statement. So I do agree with Helen on that I did. I was led to believe as well that it was going to be Vincent that was living upstairs and that was going to be a law office. So I do apologize for my misinformation as well.
Well, I don't know that anybody needs to apologize.
No,
I mean,
just let you know, for
those
the record.
things are, unfortunately, things can change. So,
But-
yeah.
But yeah, just so, yeah, residential, did look at, when Ryan and I were brainstorming once, of residential and trying to put duplex or doing something. You got to remember those setbacks on the side and the front are pretty strict. So thank you.
Meaning that it's going to be
It'd be a small bungalow.
it's going to be a small, yeah. Anybody else from the public like to speak on this item? Okay, it's 8:05. We'll close the public hearing and return the discussion to the board. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody else should make a recommendation? I'm glad we're having this discussion, that something's being considered for this lot. It was good to see that the house came down, for sure, because I don't think anybody wanted to see it stay the way it did. And obviously, at some point in time, the city would have to intercede in that. But I'm glad to see, like I said, I see that in front of them. When it becomes a public health hazard, you almost have to do something. But either way, it's good to see that house is gone. I do think I think this fits within the intent of what the downtown overlay is for. If you go blocks to the west of Meridian, you see commercial extend north of Main. Maybe not all the way to First Street everywhere, but it's kind of sprinkled in there throughout, that there are other commercial properties between in Main and First Street on the other side streets too. So, any more thoughts, Paul?
Well, I just, I'm torn a little bit whether this should be, a little further study or whether the applicant, I think, again, and boy, I sure wish I had time to put together a bunch of photos to show a streetscape that's exactly like this, trees and all, and what was done. And I think if there's, some flexibility on the part of the applicant to something that, they're willing to work with the city to something that is, has more of a residential feel to it, but yet is obviously commercial. I could be persuaded to support it.
Let me jump in real quick and let's just talk about that for just a second, because I want to make sure we're clear to everybody. And I think where you're, help me out, Paul, if I'm wrong, where you're headed, that we can, if it is the desire of this body to approve this commercial zoning, we have the opportunity to do that through the site plan review. I'm not questioning you, Paul. I wanted to just say that out loud, that we do still have that opportunity.
But I think for the audience at large need to sort of understand that multiple step process. They're not, there's no intent, I think, here on this body to throw a bar into an area of residential. I want to kind of communicate that, at least on my part. So, but yeah, this is just a rezone.
And all would
That is
have
very
the
true.
opportunity to be part of that discussion too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I think everybody, because I think there's a win-win here, but yeah. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
Any other comments, thoughts? I think with the process that's in place and the ability to be able to allow people to be a part of the discussion of what would happen with the property if it is zone commercial, I think helps, would help address some of the concerns. And I do wonder with the same thing too, because we've seen it on corner lots before, of how practical it is for someone to actually rebuild residential here that would be a viable, marketable property. I don't know. I'm not a builder. And I'd hate to take away an opportunity that's in front of us now, because I really think something needs to happen with that property. So I'm going to, based on everything that we've heard tonight, and I know this is not ideal for everyone, and I'm with Paul, and I was a little bit torn too, but I'm going to go ahead and based on city staff recommendations, public comments and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve RZ 2023-03.
I'll second.
I have motion and second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I think like to add for those that are in the audience said that, you know, we're as concerned as you are to protect the character of Valley Center, especially on certain streetscapes. And I know for one, I'm going to be a pretty vocal person when it comes to, and I'll bring all kinds of examples of what can be done. And even from a broader perspective of Valley Center, especially on some of these key streets, you know, we want a win-win for everybody.
And thank you for that, Paul. And I would echo that too and say, I appreciate y'all being here. And I don't want you to think that we've discounted anything that we've heard tonight because there is more to this process.
Yeah. absolutely.
And we welcome and hope to see you here again and get your input on the site plan review. Brent, just so maybe everybody here knows, do you know when this goes to the city council?
Yes, based upon your approval and your recommendation, we'll go to the city council on April 4th, which is next Tuesday. It will be the first reading. And then the second one will happen 2 weeks after that, as we do meet on the first and third Tuesday of every month.
Is there an opportunity? Is there a public hearing? Is there an opportunity for public engagement at the April 4th city council? I just want to make sure everybody knows
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yep. And so it's an ordinance. And so each ordinance will have a public hearing assigned to each ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Any other items for us tonight, Brent?
I do not believe you have any old or unfinished business, Mr. Chairman, or new business.
Okay. And no meeting next month.
No meeting next month.
Okay.
So Ryan gets 2 months off. Remember this now.
We'll make sure to let him know. And I commend you for doing a great job tonight, Mr. City Administrator. Thank you.
I'll let him know about that, but thank you.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell him that, but thank you.
Yeah, we like to.
All right.
We have somebody that we can really grill, see, we could,
Yeah,
you know,
there you go.
you're so, yeah.
If there's no other items by planning commissioners, I move that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
I've got some,
Yeah, no, that'd be good.
it's